So I ended up saying that the thesis is that the Bible portrays the Jews as NT-oriented and the Gentiles as SJ-oriented. The Jews are not content to believe. Throughout the whole Bible, they're portrayed as being stiff-necked, rebellious, not believing, and instead being fourth quadrant oriented. So let me continue with this. So it's true, throughout the whole Bible, if you read the Bible, which a lot of people don't, but they claim that they know it, just read the whole Bible. Remember, I said that knowing is the opposite of belonging. So contemplation, passion, flowing, knowing is the opposite of belief, faith, behavior, and belonging. Well, remember, knowing is the opposite. So throughout the Bible, it always, whenever somebody does not obey, whenever people are disobedient, there is death. Let me give some examples. If you don't obey the Sabbath, you will be killed. It's a law. If you don't obey, you are killed. Remember, knowledge is death. Biting out of the tree of knowledge. They bought it and they bit it, they would surely die. Interestingly, a lot of cultures have shown this. So even in like shamanistic cultures, they equate death with gaining knowledge. I described how when people do die and they have near-death experiences, they come back and they claim that they gained a lot of knowledge and they become more, they start to want to learn more. There's somebody listening. So they begin to want to learn more. So we have knowledge and death are equated. So the Israelites, there's another example of in Numbers where the Israelites are not obeying Moses and they're not obeying God. So Moses says, you know what, you guys are going to know that God is with me and you guys are going to be killed for disobeying. So then the ground opens up and it swallows up not only the Israelites, but it says their belongings. Remember, belonging is the opposite of knowledge. So death, their belongings are also swallowed up. And if you think about it, probably it was their belongings that got them in trouble in the first place. Why? Because the reason why they weren't obeying, one of the reasons they weren't obeying Moses was because Moses had a lot of power, authority over them, and they were jealous. He had things that they didn't have, and so they were not content to follow him. They wanted to break out of his authority. So they're not being second quadrant oriented, they're being fourth quadrant oriented. They don't want to follow any authority. So what happens, they're killed and their belongings are swallowed up with them. So it was actually a good thing that they were killed. Now, once again, so we see after disobedience, we see death, the knowledge. The interesting thing is that the family of people that were killed, it says later in that chapter that he didn't kill the whole family, and that a remnant of it went on. So once again, it doesn't seem like God hated them completely. He kept them alive. So then you see the Israelites continue to be disobedient. They continue to be killed over and over again every time you're disobedient. So another example is if you have sexual immorality, the Israelites start to have wives from different nations, and they start to be sexually immoral. Well, then God sends plagues. So once again, we see after disobedience, there's death. So knowledge, remember, knowledge and sex are equivalent. When you know somebody, you have sex. We have we have disobedience, and we have the plague that hits, the death that occurs afterwards. Well, all this stuff is occurring. Then Balaam, so the Israelites are walking through these people's cultures, or through these people's territories. And one of the people that the Israelites walks by was the Edomites. And the Edomites are portrayed as SJs. The Israelites say, can we walk through your place? We're not going to take anything. Let us just walk through. And the Edomites say, no. And then they don't give any reason why. They just say no, because they don't like them. They just don't like the Israelites. And then the same thing with the Philistines, the same thing with these other groups are portrayed as SJ-oriented, because they say no and they just demand it, but they don't explain why. So then the Israelites end up killing them. or not killing them. They don't kill the Edomites; they just walk around. But there's this is a way that it works. But anyways, to continue, one of the groups tells this guy Balaam, who lived in Mesopotamia, who had a relationship with God. They tell him to curse the Israelites. So Balaam gets on his donkey. But then God tells Balaam, "Hey Balaam, these are a blessed people. Do not kill them." So think about it. Why would God say that the Israelites are a blessed people? He keeps on killing them. They keep on being disobedient. Well, it's because they're disobedient that God likes them so much that God wants to preserve them. He says they're a blessed people. So Balaam does not kill them, does not curse them. He ends up blessing them. And then right after Balaam blesses them, it goes back to the Israelites, and once again the Israelites continue to be disobedient, and they continue to be killed by God and by plagues and so forth. So the question is, well, once again, they're blessed people, and Balaam just blessed them. Then why do they continue to be disobedient? Because God didn't change his mind. God didn't say, "Oh, they're disobedient. They're not a blessed people anymore." I think it's very obvious it's because they're disobedient that God sees them as a blessed people. They're not second quadrant oriented, they're fourth quadrant oriented. This is the way they're portrayed. They're portrayed as NTs, not SJs. There's other examples of Gentiles being portrayed as SJs in the Bible and Jews being portrayed as NTs. So another example is Ruth, who was David's, I think it was great-great-grandmother. She's portrayed as extremely loyal, and I go to a Christian church and the Christians say like, "Oh yeah, she's just the paragon of perfection. This woman is amazing." And they say so it describes that she ends up marrying some Israelite guys, and then her husband dies, but then she insists that she wants to live with the Israelites, her Israelite husband's mother. So she's extremely loyal, and then she lives with her. And she goes back to the Israelite mother's homeland, and then they have her working in the field. And when she's working, she picks up. She does an amazing job. She's such a great worker, right? She's portrayed as an SJ. She's a great worker. She's extremely loyal. She's relationship oriented, and she's just when I go to the Christian churches, they say she's just such an amazing person. But to me, it's a backhanded compliment. They're portraying her as being hardworking, as being kind of like a servant. And whereas throughout the whole Bible, they portray the Israelites as being more, on their own, not service-oriented, being disobedient. So we're seeing the same type of thing. Even when God talks to the Egyptian Pharaoh, the Egyptian Pharaoh is portrayed as SJ-oriented. God is telling him, like, you better stop. And then the Pharaoh says, "Okay." And he says, like, "I believe in you, God." And he says, "You are a great God." And so he's being kind of deferential and subservient and pious. But even though he does end up disobeying and he ends up being, the Egyptians end up being killed because of him, he still ends up, he still is being, he still behaves like an SJ in that he acts pious and he's, believing him and acting in this manner, being kind of deferential, pious and deferential. So then we go to so you say, okay, well, this is the Old Testament. The Old Testament was written, historians say the Old Testament was written by Jews, and historians agree the Old Testament was anti-Gentile. But then Christians say, well, look at the New Testament. The New Testament is a New Testament, and in this Testament, it's very clear that Jesus was for the Gentiles and that Jesus actually hates the Jews and that he chose the Gentiles. I disagree. So once again, we have so whenever Jesus goes heals somebody and calls somebody faithful, every time he says it, it's either a woman or it's a Gentile. So let me explain one. So there's 10 people. All of them are Israelites and one was a Gentile. And then Jesus heals them. Then the Gentile comes back and he says, Jesus, thank you so much. You are wonderful. Thank you, Lord. And he's being very subservient, very pious and deferential. And then Jesus says, do not thank me. He says, it was your faith that healed you. So remember, I talked about the placebo effect. If you believe that something's going to heal you, if you have faith in it, it could be a pill. A doctor could give you a pill and it could have sugar in it. And if you believe it's going to work, if you have faith in it, then it often works, because it's called the placebo effect. It's some sort of psychological phenomena, and it somehow works. Science has proven that if you believe something's going to work and if you have faith in it, then it often works. But the interesting thing that I learned in my psychology class on consciousness is, the more knowledge you have, the less the placebo effect works. So if you realize that something is fake, so in Hindu culture, they have these people who fake out the Indian people by having these fake potions and doing things that have been proven that aren't real, but the people sometimes are healed by it due to the placebo effect. And there's other examples. Doctors, they give these sugar pills, they give what are called placebo pills, and they actually work on patients, they heal them. And it also often works only when the doctor believes it. Sometimes it works best when the doctor believes it's going to work too, which is an interesting phenomenon as well. We can get into that hopefully later. But so long as the patient believes it's going to work, then it works. But like I said, they've shown that if the patient, if the doctor says, okay, this pill has, and I'm going to make up I'm just going to make it up, lithium in it, and this should help you with your anxiety issues. And then the person looks up online and he says, oh wait, lithium doesn't help me with my anxiety. It doesn't help with anxiety issues. There's no evidence about this. Then it's not going to work for the patient because he has knowledge that it's not going to work. So when he takes it, it's not going to heal him. So actually being ignorant, not knowing too much, just being, loyal and believing in authority helps the placebo work the best. So when Jesus says that it's your faith that healed you, he's complimenting. It's a great thing. Like I said, SJs who believe in religion, they recognize the truth in their religions, and the fact that they have maintained them is a good thing, because there's truth in them. And if it wasn't for SJs, then they would continue to be. They would probably have been abandoned a long time ago. But the fact that that people are healed by this stuff, it is due to the placebo effect. So you say, no, you're wrong. Actually, it was because Jesus had magical powers, and he ended up healing the person. Well, evidence proves the contrary again. So once again, we go to when Jesus tries to heal the Jews. Remember, I said according to the Bible, the Jews are portrayed as NTs, and Gentiles are portrayed as SJs. So when Jesus goes to the Jews, he tries to heal them. If he had magical powers, he could heal anybody, but he can't heal the Jews. And then so he's trying to heal the Jews. It's not working. And then it says Jesus was amazed by their unbelief. So the idea is, the Jews didn't believe that he had any authority to heal them. They didn't believe that it was going to work. They realized, they thought this guy, this doesn't work. He's just, he can't heal us. So they didn't believe in him. They didn't believe in his authority. They did not trust him. That's why they were not healed. Now, the thing about Jesus is, he says he was amazed by their unbelief. It does not say that he was angered by their unbelief. It does not say that he was annoyed at their unbelief. He does not say that he was furious. He says that he was amazed. Once again, it seems like he was upset, but actually he was amazed. He's kind of complimenting the Jews. The New Testament compliments the Jews in the way it portrays them as fourth quadrant oriented and not second quadrant oriented. So also going back to the part where the woman goes to Jesus and she's a Gentile, and Jesus says that he does not throw bread to the dogs. And then she says, well, even a dog, because she's a Gentile, he says this to her, and then she says, even a dog will accept some crumbs. So then Jesus says, wow, I've never seen such faith. Your daughter is healed. So once again, he compliments her with the faith, and the daughter is healed. But like I said, the faith is kind of a backhanded compliment, saying that someone has faith. So hopefully continue more in a little bit. But you see, this can be seen as controversial. But I think that not only this, but there's a ton of evidence, and it's just actually just extremely apparent that the Bible tries to portray the Jews as NTs and the Gentiles as SJs.